Hello everyone, I'm Darcy Bono, and in this video I'm going to show you just how easy it is to make an interesting looking carapace, or chitin, or whatever you want to call the shell of a Tyranid. Now I'm going to be showing you how to do this vibrant green, but this technique will work with basically any color as long as you are using similar hues, and I'll explain a little bit more later, but for now, let's get started. Now, I ordered this miniature through Wish, so it came in great condition, minus the head and the claws that are still in China somewhere. But just so I don't get sued, that's very much a joke. This is a sub-assembled version of the actual GW Lictor. I highly recommend working in sub-assembly when it comes to these new Tyranid models. It just makes it much easier to paint. So here is his little Cthulhu Lovecraftian head, and then here are his giant claws. They're very easy to attach after you have already painted them. There's really no seams or anything you need to worry about. So I'm starting with a white prime miniature using white scar spray just to make sure that my subsequent layers of contrast paint are going to be very vibrant. All you're going to do in step 1 is just apply black Templar contrast straight from the pot. No need to thin it, no need to use contrast medium. We're not worried about blotching or pooling or anything because of what we're going to be adding to these shells afterwards. Now the reason we're using Black Templar rather than Black Legion contrast is because Black Templar contrast is much more transparent, so you get more of the traditional contrast behavior in your paint. Essentially it will sink into the recesses, darken those, but also tint the raised portions as well, creating much more definition. Black Legion is more of just a flat black. It's just very opaque and will give you a flat black surface, but given that these Tyranids are very textured, we want something more transparent so it highlights all those little ridges very easily. So that's why I recommend Black Templar for this. Also, it's a much greener black, which is perfect for cool colors like the teal and the greens that we're going to be putting over top of this. Okay, for better visibility, I've changed to a gray background. Apologies for the inconsistency. One of these days I'll remember that the first time, but this is what your Black Templar will look like once it's completely dried, and you can move on to the fun part. We're going to easily create a speckled pattern on our black surface using a piece of sponge held by tweezers and white paint. I'm using Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White due to its opacity and coverage. It is very, very opaque and can even cover over black very easily like this. So dip your sponge in the white paint and get most of it off. Make sure to test your pattern first on something that's not your miniature, whether it be your hand or a piece of paper, and then once you have a pattern that looks like this, then apply it to the miniature. Don't just dip it straight in the paint and then go right to your miniature because you'll end up with a big blot. So make sure you're getting the paint off first and you're getting a pattern that you like, and then apply it over the black shell surface. So once you've got your pattern down, it'll look like this, and you're ready to move on to your glaze. We're going to be mixing Kroxigor scales and Lahmian Medium in an even ratio. And the reason we're using Lahmian Medium instead of contrast medium is just because it makes it a little bit more transparent. You absolutely can use contrast medium, you just might have to use a tiny bit more. But we want to keep this very transparent so we don't undo how bright this is and oversaturate our black as well. So that being said, there's really not much to this. Just coat your carapace in this glaze. If you'd like to retain the black and not have it just be a deep tinted dark teal, just avoid it. Pat it on the white specks and then lightly feather it out at the edges. But for me, it looks good, I think, just coated over the entire surface because that Black Templar is a green black, so it blends very nicely with this teal. So if you're using a warm color instead, if you wanted to do this with an orange or a yellow, I would recommend just lightly patting it over the white specks and don't pull it into your black. You could honestly wipe your brush and kind of pat the edges of the border where the white meets the black, just so you don't end up with this kind of yellow-orange film over top the black. It just doesn't blend as nicely. So you can do this with warm colors, you just have to do it a bit more sparingly. But for things like greens, blues, purples, they go over this beautifully. You can kind of do it with reckless abandon. So here's what it looks like once it's dry. You have this very neat looking speckled teal pattern. If you want to stop here, by all means do so, because I think this looks pretty cool. But I'm actually going to add an additional layer of speckling to this, and this is going to change our teal a little bit. So we're just repeating the exact same process as before. I'm just doing it more sparingly, taking our sponge that has a little bit of white paint on it and just lightly patting the edges. We don't want to overdo it because we don't want to cover up this teal. I just want to create a secondary color just for a little bit more interest. So we've got our second layer of speckling done. We are now going to move on to the secondary color. In this case, I'm using Stinging Scorpion Green Contrast. It is a very bright neon green, and I, again, have mixed it with an equal amount of Lahmian Medium, just so it's nice and transparent. So, exact same process as before. Just apply this over where the white is. Again, if you want to retain your initial color, if you want to keep this over the teal, so your undercoat is that teal instead of a green, just apply it only to the white. So you can see from that first stroke, I just put it on the white. I didn't swipe the whole thing. You absolutely can coat the whole thing if you want, but keep in mind the color that you put down initially is going to be tinted by your secondary color. So in this case, if you look closely, the areas where this neon yellow green meets the teal, it becomes an emerald green, and that's because you have a yellow mixing with a blue-green, which gives you a mid-tone green. You're just kind of blending into the color wheel. And we'll look at the color wheel after this so you can kind of better visualize what I'm saying and plan how this can work with other hues as well. So that is it. There is a nice speckled and vibrant carapace. It's looking very alien, very Xenos-y. That's a word. So we're going to take a look at the color wheel now so you will get an idea of other ways that you can use this technique. So this is the color wheel. I am by no means an art student whatsoever, but basically what this is a visual representation of how colors interact. In this video, we did a blue-green accented by a yellow-green, and where those colors meet, they naturally blend into just a regular green. So, that being said, you can use this technique with any of the colors as long as they are next to each other on the color wheel. So for example, if you wanted to do this with red, you'd lay down something like Blood Angel's red, possibly even Flesh Terror's red if you wanted a darker, richer red, and then do your second layer of speckling with an orange like Gryph-hound orange, maybe even Eodin yellow, as that's more of an orange yellow. Just as long as they are near each other on the color wheel, they will blend together nicely and create this cool effect. So that is how you paint a very Xenos-y speckled carapace for your Tyranids in no time with very little effort. Now, if you'd also like to paint your Tyranids in this color scheme, this is just a homebrew High Fleet Jorogumo, which is named after Japanese spider demons. I've actually never taken Japanese, so I apologize for that pronunciation. But if you'd like to use this exact color scheme, here is a color recipe card for you. Feel free to screenshot this. There is also a link in the video description to my Ko-fi page that also has it on there if you would like to bookmark that for easy access. Feel free. But since this is a fairly eye-searing color scheme, I felt it would be more universally beneficial to just focus on how to do the carapace and tune it to your own color scheme rather than doing an entire video on how to duplicate my color scheme. So all that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something and now have some ideas for your own Tyranids. If you do end up using this in like a different color scheme, I would absolutely love to see it. Feel free to send me any pictures or tag me in any social media post if you use this on your own. I genuinely love seeing the amount of creativity that people have within the community. So show me your miniatures if you end up using this technique on them. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it and want to support the channel, you can always contribute to my Ko-fi link. It's a digital tip jar, or send me a super thanks on YouTube. So that being said, thanks very much for joining me, and until we meet again, happy painting, everyone.